Time is like a limited container, just fill it up with minutiae, there will never be room for things to do. We cannot count sand in watches, nor can we count how much time we have left. Keep wasting it on small things, you won't do anything big in life. Whether you are an ordinary employee or a brilliant director, time management is still a difficult problem to solve. Elisa Cohn, a knowledgeable consultant working with senior executives of corporations, thinks time management is a top issue that should be taken into account. How to use time is reasonable. This question may not be unfamiliar during Cohn's practice. Instead of giving a long speech to the matter, she simply told a short story about a glass vase filled with stones, beads, and sand. For those who are still struggling with the problem of time performance, this is your answer. The story is just like this. One day, a professor brought an empty vase to class and said he needed to fill it. First of all, he took out a pair full of big stones and put them in a jar one after another until he could not add any more. The professor asked the student if the vase was full. The answer he received was the yes consensus from the whole class. Without saying anything, he silently took out a bowl full of small beads and poured it into the jar. He shook the vase until they filled the void that the stones had created. The professor asked the class that the vase was full and the answer he received was the same as the previous one. This time, the teacher brought a bucket of sand and continued to pour into the vase that had originally contained stones and beads. The sand that filled every single gap that reached the naked eye did not detect. And with the professor, the vase was only really full after he poured a bottle of water. Now the vase is full, said the professor. I have a question for you. If you pour sand first, can we put big stones inside? This is an unfamiliar story if you know Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Effective Habits. With Cohn, each object is placed in the vessel for each job we need to complete each day. Their small size corresponds to our level of importance and priority with that job. For example, large rocks are long-term, strategic goals, small, similar beads are short-term, less important and, ultimately, every grain of sand represents small, meaningless, nonsense things that are constantly appearing but are not. Meanwhile, water is a permanent factor that distracts you. Once you have identified the big goals and the time spent with it, less important jobs will allocate and fill the rest of the day, like the beads that slip into the gaps that the big stones make up. On the other hand, phone, email notification, social network, nothing else is water and sand, which makes you deviate from the goal. You won't do anything if you're always struggling with a bunch of things at the same time, Cohn says, so, in each week of work, spend a few hours of precious time concentrating on it. For important things. Big stones, like a long-term investment project, long-term plans appear, which are the most abstract, broad, and hard to imagine things. One of the biggest mistakes that leaders often make is to focus on short-term goals, things that immediately bring benefits but forget or delay the factors that ensure sustainable development. Long-term. Why is the marketing manager always presenting himself from one project to another? Because he keeps putting big stones in the tent to plan an outstanding person to replace him. But above all, but honestly sharing with you, you will never get out of work if you don't judge yourself and accept that you still have things that are really more important out there.